For most of my adult life, I've been someone who thrives on productivity. I believed that the key to success was constant movement, always working, always achieving, always doing something. The idea of resting or taking a break felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. After all, if I wasn't working towards something, wasn't I falling behind? If I wasn't busy, wasn't I wasting time? The pressure to always be moving forward, always be progressing, always be doing, was something I internalized deeply. By the time I was 22, I had already achieved a lot: a degree, a solid job, a network of professional connections. But I felt overwhelmed, constantly drained, and often anxious about what came next. I was checking off all the boxes, but I never felt truly rested or at peace. I spent my days in a rush, rushing to get things done, rushing to meet deadlines, rushing to impress, rushing to achieve. There was always something I could be doing, and I was terrified that if I slowed down, I'd miss something crucial, or worse, I'd fall behind. But after months of running this constant race, I found myself crashing. It wasn't immediate, it was more of a slow burn. At first it was subtle, a slight fatigue, a loss of interest in activities I usually enjoyed, difficulty sleeping. But as time went on, the effects became more obvious. I started feeling disconnected from the work I once loved. I would sit at my desk, staring at the computer screen, unable to focus. I had no energy to give. I felt like I was constantly running on fumes, yet I still pushed myself to keep going. I didn't know how to stop. Stopping felt like failure. And then one day, I hit a breaking point. I was sitting in my apartment, staring at my to-do list, completely overwhelmed. I had been pushing myself harder than ever, but I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. I was burnt out, mentally exhausted, and emotionally drained. It wasn't just a lack of physical energy. It was a lack of motivation and a sense of deep dissatisfaction with everything I was doing. I felt like I had lost touch with myself, with my passion for the work, and with the joy I used to find in the things I loved. It was in that moment of exhaustion, in that feeling of complete overwhelm, that I realized something important. I couldn't keep going at this pace. I needed to rest. I needed to take a break, but the idea of taking a break felt foreign to me. I had never really allowed myself to stop. The thought of doing nothing felt like failure, like I was letting myself down, like I was wasting valuable time. But deep down, I knew I couldn't keep going the way I was. I needed to give myself permission to rest, to take a step back, to be still. At first, taking a break wasn't easy. It wasn't just about physical rest. It was also about letting go of the guilt that came with slowing down. I felt like I was betraying my sense of purpose by not being constantly productive. I felt that taking a break meant I was lazy, that I was giving up on my goals, or that I wasn't serious about my future. I had spent so long in a cycle of constant motion, where the value of my time was defined by how much I could achieve. My worth had become tied to what I could do and how fast I could do it. But the more I tried to push myself to do more, the less I actually accomplished. I was stuck in a cycle of burnout, unable to give my best because I hadn't given myself the space to recharge. Taking that first break felt like an act of rebellion against my own mindset, against the world's expectations, and against the pressure I had internalized for so long. I had to learn that rest wasn't a sign of weakness. It wasn't a sign of failure. It was an essential part of the process of growth, creativity, and productivity. It was necessary. The first few days of resting felt uncomfortable. I wasn't used to doing nothing. I wasn't used to allowing myself the luxury of time without guilt. I spent the first few days feeling restless, anxious, like I was wasting time. But as the days went by, I began to realize something surprising. I wasn't wasting time. I was recharging. As I began to give myself permission to rest, I started to feel a shift. The first change I noticed was the physical relief. My body, which had been tense and drained for so long, started to relax. I slept better. I ate better. I moved through the day without the constant weight of stress hanging over me. But the changes weren't just physical, they were emotional and mental as well. For the first time in a long while, I started to feel present. I wasn't rushing through my day. I wasn't planning ahead or worrying about what I needed to do next. I was here, in the moment, allowing myself to just be. I took walks outside. I read books for pleasure instead of productivity, and I spent time with people who made me feel calm. I allowed myself to do things that nourished my soul instead of constantly thinking about the things I should be doing. The more I allowed myself to relax, the more I noticed how disconnected I had been from my own needs. I realized that in the rush to succeed, I had forgotten how to enjoy the present moment. I had forgotten how to be with myself without the pressure to be doing something all the time. One of the biggest revelations came when I realized that rest wasn't just about physical recovery, it was about emotional and mental recovery too. I had spent so much time trying to prove myself that I had neglected my own well-being. But by taking time to pause, I was able to reconnect with myself. I could hear my own thoughts again. I could feel my own desires, passions, and needs without the constant noise of ambition and external expectations. During my time off, I spent a lot of time reflecting. I thought about why I had been running so hard, why I had been so determined to keep moving forward without stopping. I realized that my drive for constant productivity had been rooted in fear. Fear of failure, fear of missing out, fear of not being enough. I had been so afraid of being left behind or overlooked that I had put my own needs aside, thinking that my worth came from doing rather than being. But in the stillness, I realized that my worth isn't tied to how much I can accomplish or how productive I am. It's tied to who I am at my core. It's about my values, my character, and my ability to show up for myself, not just for others. In taking a break, I wasn't being lazy or neglectful. I was honoring my need for rest, for reflection, and for self-care. I was recognizing that in order to give my best, I first needed to be my best. And that started with taking care of myself. The more I embraced the idea of doing nothing, the more I realized how much I had been missing. I had been so focused on the future, so focused on achieving, that I had forgotten to appreciate the present. I had forgotten to appreciate who I was, right now. And in doing nothing, I rediscovered the importance of simply being. Taking a break didn't mean I wasn't ambitious or driven. It didn't mean I had given up on my goals. It simply meant that I had learned to find balance. I had learned that doing nothing for a while doesn't mean that you're lazy or unproductive. In fact, it's often when we give ourselves permission to rest that we come back stronger, more focused, and more energized. It's in the quiet moments of rest that our best ideas can come to the surface. It's in the stillness that we can reconnect with ourselves and our purpose. I began to see rest not as a luxury, but as an essential part of the process. In taking time off, I found clarity. I found a sense of peace that I hadn't realized I was missing. And most importantly, I found a renewed sense of gratitude for the things that truly mattered: my health, my relationships, and my ability to experience life fully. As I returned to work and to my normal routine, I carried with me the lessons I had learned during my time off. I learned to approach each day with intention, to balance productivity with rest, and to embrace the moments of stillness that allow me to recharge. I learned to honor my need for rest and to recognize that taking a break isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength to acknowledge when you need to slow down, and the wisdom to know that in doing so, you come back even stronger. In the end, doing nothing for a while didn't just make me feel better. It changed my entire perspective on life. It taught me that productivity isn't the only measure of success. Success is about balance, well-being, and self-care. It's about recognizing that in order to be truly successful, we need to honor our need for rest, for reflection, and for being present in the moment.